Well, good evening. Everybody doing good? Sweet. Hey, we're really excited to be finishing this series so strongly because on stage with John and Debbie, we have two of the people that I personally, and I know my wife and I, Mallory, admire most. We just think that you guys are fantastic. And I know that come the end of tonight, you're going to think the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So just to give a little bit of introduction, John, I get to work with John a little bit here at North Point. John is, he works with our men's department. Mm-hmm. Some of you guys might know him from a little thing called Seven. And John and Debbie recently did this incredible marriage short-term group called Becoming One, which was a raving success around here. But the way that Mallory and I got to know John and Debbie was, I had sort of got to meet John a little bit when I moved here, and Mallory and I were dating, and John and I had a couple of times where we hung out on his front porch and chatted, and John counseled me through all the tough stuff I was going through, helped to fix me. It was awesome. But then when Mallory and I were trying to figure out the whole moving towards marriage thing, when we had kind of had a couple of conversations that we maybe wanted to get married, we wanted to have some conversations with some wise, smart people before we did that. And we talked and we said, how do we decide who we want to kind of walk us through and answer some tough questions and maybe even ask us some tough questions before we decide to take the plunge towards marriage? And the question we asked each other was, well, whose marriage do you admire? Who's somebody who you want to have a marriage like when you get to their stage? And for us, that was John and Debbie Woodall. And so they really kindly walked us through, I don't know, was a couple of months.
Very kindly walked us through a couple of months.
And asked us some really tough questions. Yeah. And we shared hard parts of our story, and it was incredibly important for setting us up for our marriage.
And you're still married.
Yeah.
We are still married.
Made it a whole year and a half, guys.
Year and a half.
We're experts. We're not.
So with that in mind, then we thought since we're in this series, Perfect Family, because no one has one, but we all want one, and we had talked about our family of origin. We talked about leaving our family of origin last week. We want to talk about this week. How do we set ourselves up best for a successful future family? Yeah. So we thought John and Debbie would be perfect people to talk about this. So here's what we're going to do. So John and Debbie are going to, Mallory and I are going to have a bit of a conversation with them and ask them some questions. But then after that, we're going to give you guys the opportunity to text in any questions that you have, and John and Debbie are going to help answer those. So there's a number that's going to come up on the screen. Are we putting it up now?
I think we're going to wait.
We're going to wait. So
maybe not. Oh, it's there.
There it is. Yeah. So at any point, you can feel free, just text in your questions. Nothing's off limits. At least I don't think it is anything off limits. No? We're good? Okay.
Great.
No, we just say, I don't know. Yeah. Or I just say, Debbie, what do you think? So
that's great.
And then I say, yes, dear. So
there you go. Okay, so you guys have been married for 42 years.
42.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's amazing. Honestly, yes. We can clap for that.
42.
42.
So we have a lot to glean from you guys, but before marriage, obviously, it started with dating.
Well, before we even get there, John, you wanted to kick us off with a visual illustration
Great
just to kind of set up the conversation.
I thought since last week, my wife and I were here, and Dave Adamson did such a masterful job with the board. I thought, I'd like to try that. I haven't used this light board yet at MP night, so I wanted to be like Clay Scroggins and Dave Adamson. But the truth is, when Mallory wrote and said, we're in this series called The Perfect Family, and we would love for you and Debbie to come and talk about that, I just have to be completely open and honest with you. There was a thing in me like, I don't want to do that. We are so far from a perfect family, I don't even know if I want to talk about it. And that's just being completely raw and honest with you. And one of the reasons, even though we're 42 years into our marriage and into our family, we're still working through a lot of things. So even though the series, here's the first thing that I want to do on this beautiful white thing is, you know how you put that line through? There's no crossing here. There's no surfing here. There's no shooting ducks here or whatever they have. There's no perfect family here. You didn't come out of one. We didn't come out of one. And so what you've come to tonight, if you're visiting with a friend, you're really coming to listen to an older couple say, hey, here's a couple ideas that we've picked up along the way. Here's some things that have worked for us, but here's some things stay far away from if you can. And you're going to be here tonight and you're going to say, hey, I like that idea. I'm going to take it. There's going to be other ones where you go, I hate that idea. And you're going to text me and you go, I'm out, I'm leaving. But we want you to wrestle with us as we talk about this perfect family. And a couple things that I want to set up here is, here's one thing that I know about the family that Debbie and I came from. We talked about family of origin, because there's no perfect family. Every single one of us have walked into this situation with baggage. You may not I don't know your dad, I don't know your mom, I don't know your family, but all of us have come out of a family that has some baggage. And one of the reasons that we're still together is we've had to seek a lot of counsel working through our baggage, because two things that you bring into your relationships, into your marriage and into your family, you're going to bring you, which is referred to as your nature or your personality, and the other thing that you bring in is your nurture or your story, the story of your father, the story of your mother. These two things are the things that make up the baggage that are coming into this imperfect family. Do you want to say something on the nurture before I show the other one?
Sure. I mean, when we talk about our marriage thing, and we're trying to encourage people, we say the first thing that we recognized was we came into our marriage, both of us, we both carried 2 suitcases in. And in our case, I mean, we were with them earlier, and they said their first year was so wonderful. Ours was not. Ours was awful, because I think our suitcases just exploded as soon as we brought them in. And we recognized that we had to deal with our hard wiring. I'm very different than John. And we used to think at first that we were just so alike. Well, our differences just came out of the suitcase immediately. And then our nurture, how we were raised. And you don't know about these things until you're in a situation where you have to deal with it. And so, yeah, there's no perfect family, but that's why Christ came. And that's why he is the only one that's perfect, and he's the one that we have to go to with our imperfect bags.
A couple other things just in way of introduction over here. So we come in with baggage, our nature, our nurture, our environment. And one of the things that you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, I don't care what age you are, you're 20, 30, 40, I don't know the ages of everybody here, but even at 63, we're in our 60s now, something that you will be doing for the rest of your life, if you're paying attention, is you will be uncovering, you will uncover, you will discover, and you will recover your true self. It's a lifetime journey. So, we're going to be getting into some questions about how do you find the one and how do you be the one and that kind of thing. Just know that for the rest of your life, you're going to be uncovering these things. You're going to be discovering different things about you and the one that you want to find, and you're going to be in this process of recovering. A good friend of mine at Buckhead, I went up to this guy, some of you might know, John Hamrick, and I went up to John Hamrick and I said, hey, I think I'm healed. John knew that one of my wounds was being a part of a big church, 10,000 people. If I pastored a really big church or a big deal, it would make me feel more significant. And I said to John Hamrick, I said, I think I'm healed of that. And he goes, can I make an observation? I said, sure. He said, I think you're healing from it. And I thought, you're exactly right. So we're going to be talking about this. The last thing, and then Adam and Mallory, I think you have underneath this family, this imperfect family, one of the things that we're going to be talking about is every man, every woman needs to determine the foundation for that relationship. So some of the things that we're going to be talking about, some of the questions that you've asked that they've put together are going to be looking at what are the foundations that can create a relationship in a marriage, in a family that is going to be the kind of thing that actually brings life and brings joy and brings peace and brings happiness, because it's possible. We fight a lot, but we have a terrific marriage, and it's like we say fight for one, and it's well worth the fight. So we're going to be talking about some of those. Those are my introductory remarks. Probably took up all of our time, but let's go.
That's just the setup.
That's
You're in
just
for a good one.
That's just the setup. That's the last time to the board, though.
It's phenomenal. Honestly, I'm like, where do I go from here? Okay, so one of the things in our small group, we're in a mixed small group through MP Nights, and everyone's single in our group. And one of their biggest complaints with the church is that they feel like the church hasn't done a great job of setting them up for what dating should be like, or what it should be like to find the one. Is that actually a thing? Like, not if you're with me. Like, the church hasn't done like a great job of doing that. What would you guys say to that?
I'll start just briefly, and then I think
Okay.
you've got a couple ideas on that. And again, I'll only say this perhaps one more time. We're just going to give you a couple of opinions, and I'm recognizing, even as I'm saying them, that they may seem old to you. They may seem old-fashioned, but when they send us these questions, it's like, no, these were the things that actually worked for us. They were part of that foundation that has allowed us to build this relationship. So you may have heard it said is be the one. Mm-hmm. Be the one. The one that you're looking for is be that person that you're looking for. So that starts with uncovering and discovering and recovering who you are. The other thing I'd say very briefly is I absolutely believe in a God that made all of this, heaven and earth, and he made you. There's only one you. You were created on purpose and for a purpose. You were. Your marriage, your future marriage is. Your family is on purpose. Ask God. Say, God, help us with this. Mm-hmm. I know you have some other thoughts on it.
I know. I have notes here a little bit just because there's so much to say about this. And we want to give you a little bit of our story, too, as we go through it. But I'm a little bit older than John.
Not much.
And I had been dating a little bit, and I was a little frustrated.
Now or before?
No, before.
Oh.
Before.
You did make it seem
No,
like
no,
I'm dating
sorry.
a bit.
That is true. Okay. Well, it's like, okay, so I was dating before I met John, right? Okay. And then I'm very task-oriented. He is not. So that's one of our big differences. And so I thought, I really don't like this dating, and everybody just wants to have fun and everything. And I'm like, I want to be serious about life too. And so then during this time, my sister had invited me to go to this thing where I was learning about God. And, the thing was happening that I was trying to work, and find career and everything. But everything that I did, even the things that I thought were going to be wonderful, they weren't. And they weren't satisfying. So there came a point in my life where I said, you know what, I was 21. And I said, I think that I'm tired of trying to make me happy. And so I decided that I never even knew there was such a thing as a Bible college. And my sister, she said, Debbie, I'm going to be going to this Bible college. Would you come with me? And I'm like, Bible college? So I said, well, I've done all this stuff. I'm not very happy. Hey, what the heck? I'm going to try it. And I thought, I would like to learn what God has to say and who he's like. So anyway, I ended up going to a Bible college, and I wasn't interested in dating or anything. It was like, I'm very focused. I want to do this. And already, I was older than everybody. And I thought, I want to be serious first about that. And I feel like one of the things that I'm so grateful for is I gave God that way in my life. And I said, you teach me about you, help me have a relationship with you, and I'll let you bring somebody to me. And that's what happened. That's one of the ways.
And they lived happily ever
Well,
after.
we are living happily and fightingly together.
John, give me a little bit of an intro to you. Tell me, just for those who are not familiar with you, just a little bit about you, how you met Debbie, where you guys went from there.
Well, part of the thing that was funny, she always laughs because when I introduce myself, I say I was born in Miami, Florida. Then we moved to London, England, when I was 11. So I went to the American school in London in very formative years. And I had a man come into my life at the age of 14 and told me about God, told me about Jesus, said that I could know the creator of the universe. And even at 14, it's like, seriously? Is that a for real thing? You can have like a relationship with this God? I'm interested, I'm in. And so that's where it started for me. And we ended up being at this same Bible college. The difference is I was 18 coming from London, England. She was 21 coming from London, Ontario. She sat on the front row like this really good student, and I'm on the back row just goofing off. And so it's a miracle that we even met.
I know, and he was making fun of
she's
me.
an
I didn't
artist,
know it.
and she's a phenomenal artist. She's painted all these environments, and she had pens and pencils in her hair, and I would be in the back with my buddies going, check that woman out. Man, what is up with her? And but I will say one other thing, then we can get to a couple other questions if you want. But at the age of 19, this was you all will have defining moments. One of the coolest things about life is being surprised by God and watching for defining moments in your life. Man, he wants to surprise you more than you know. You as a man, you as a woman, he just wants to surprise you and show you defining moments. And one of those for me, 19 years old, this guy comes and he speaks, an older guy like me at the time when I was 19, and he said, there's two things that last forever. There's only two things that are gonna pass on into eternity. And that's the Word of God and people. I remember that it was yesterday. Like, if this is true, that the only two things that last forever are the Word of God and people, then how can we, and what happens when you're finding the one, this gets into the values question. Have you ever taken the time yet to write down, what do you value as a man? What do you value as a woman? Those kinds of values, when they line up, when we finally met and started dating, what happened is our hearts got next to each other. And we started recognizing, man, she has a love for God and His Word similar to me. She has a care for people like I do. And we started, our hearts beating together. And that was sort of a way that the relationship flowed from there. Plus, I thought she was really good looking, too.
And still is.
And still is. Thank you. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think makes dating difficult is there's so many myths around it. And this would have been true just as much now as it was for you then. Yeah. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has advice that they want to give you, and that leads to all these different myths. So dispel one big myth about dating.
Okay, some of you might get up and leave after I say what I'm going to say, like, oh, I expected him to say that. But I'll tell you a big myth that I thought before I got married and have seen it since. I've been in this work for about 40 years, and here's a huge myth, and it's this: that intimacy is developed through experimentation. I'm not sitting here, I loved what you said, mercy triumphs over judgment. I'm not here to judge what you think about that, what your current situation is, but I think a huge myth is that intimacy comes from experimentation. Because here's what I've observed in the best relationships that I see that are making it 20, 30, 40 years, is whether you know this about you as a human being, you are made up of three parts. You are made up of a body, of a soul, and a spirit. This is your physical, this is your emotional, and this is the spiritual part of a human being. All of us were made in the image of God like that. And one of the myths in our culture and in the churches perhaps is that people will approach a relationship this way. They'll start at physical, they will move perhaps to emotional, and then maybe the spiritual. And the relationships that I've seen that have lasted have turned that total opposite. You develop a relationship with somebody. When I say spiritually, you're talking about the things of God. You're talking about the things of the Bible. You're talking about the things that are beyond this life, in a spiritual life. And then you go to an emotional part of you, and the soul of a man and the soul of a woman is, what do you think? How do you feel? And what would you like to do? You get close in your emotional, in your soul. And then the thing that you want to do is to express that closeness physically. God designed you and me. He designed our bodies not only to be next to one another, but to be in one another. But it follows a pattern of spiritual to emotional to physical. And, you know, Sean C., I talked about this up at Athens Church. He goes, man, you need to call that maximum sex. And I said, nah, Sean, you call it that. I'll just call it intimacy. But
He said it.
I just,
He did
yeah,
say it.
he did
So,
say it. Yeah.
so tell me a bit more though about intimacy, because for most people, when they're thinking about their future sex life, for me, when I was, you know, before I got married, I wasn't going like, you know what I really want in a future sex life? I want it to be intimate.
Right.
When people are talking about their sex lives, they're never like, oh, I'll tell you what,
Right.
it was intimate. Like that, you know, so what is it? Why is that an attractive thing? Why is that something that we should
I want to ask
pursue?
you a question. First
Love
of all,
it,
I
yeah.
would like you to talk more because, and my wife would as well, because we love your accent.
Yes.
Whether you're saying
Thanks, appreciate
whether
it.
you're saying anything of value or of importance, I don't know, but you sound like you are.
Yes.
But I love the way you just said that. How would you have described it? Let's blow away the idea of it's intimate. What would it be?
Yeah, because I've often heard Andy Stanley says, who's the senior pastor of our church, I've heard him say, well, purity paves the way to intimacy. So that's why you should remain sexually pure, because then you get intimacy. But for me, that wasn't what, I would never have described that as being what I was looking for. Like, I want intimacy. You're looking for pleasure. You're looking for a good time. You're looking for an ego boost. There's all these different things I think people would normally describe it as.
I love the way that you're putting this. Do you want to?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
I
Can
thought you did.
Well, what's crazy is we talk to a lot of married people, and what happens is what we have found in a lot of them is before marriage, they can't keep their hands off of one another, and yet once they do get married, it's not long before sex, physical touch, just being kind to one another, being more than roommates. This is one of the things that I hate about, or I am like, man, I will fight for oneness in our marriage, that I don't want us to be roommates or business partners. And you know, and life can get that way. It's really easy when it's real busy and you can take one another for granted. And so intimacy is something where you feel safe with one another.
That's great.
You enjoy somebody to the core. And honestly, you don't need, I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but the intimacy, the combination of feeling safe and knowing somebody. You know, I love how Scripture says it in this way, where it says that so-and-so knew so-and-so. You know, it's one thing to have sex, and sure, sex is great. But sex without feeling known and being accepted, both in your perfections and your imperfections, you add that to a physical relationship, and you add commitment to that, and you add understanding God, who He really is. Now listen, we've all been lied to throughout our life about what God's like and what the Bible says, and I wish that we had more time to be able to describe and really talk about the kind of God that really is in the Bible, you know. But anyway, I can't go into that. But I hope that that's more helpful. You know, sex is one thing, but when you add the components that God designed in marriage and in relationships, you know, period, you know, take the sex out of other things. But I'm just saying, when you have relationship, what makes it good? You share life values, you share care for one another, and then in the marriage, when you can add that physical connection, it makes it wonderful.
I love that. Let's connect.
It's so good.
Later.
Later.
You're so sweet.
You heard it. You heard it right
it.
here
She
on
said later.
Facebook. Later.
Debbie, I
Yes.
love how that just made me uncomfortable. Sorry. I love how you talked about being safe.
Yes.
And I feel like one of the books that they had us read was this book called Safe Haven Marriage. And especially for people who, it's all of us, who walk into relationships with baggage, it just has, you know, one suitcase might be a bit bigger or heavier
Yes.
than your partner's. For me, I walked in with baggage differently than Adam. Our family of origins are incredibly different. As you move towards one another, as you have baggage, what is baggage in a relationship that is not okay to permit? Like, you actually couldn't even create a safe place for that person because that's not permittable,
What baggage bringing in?
if any.
Yeah.
Trick question.
Okay, if you're talking about baggage before marriage, is that what
Or
you're
bringing
talking
it in.
about? Or
Yeah, I would say so. So in a dating relationship,
dating
you
What's a
find
deal
something
breaker?
out. Yeah, you
What you're
find
asking?
something out,
Okay.
maybe, yeah.
all right, because that's how I understood the question before. Okay, before I met John, I was at a job and everything, and there was this really cute guy that was the boss and everything. And the baggage that I brought in, first of all, to the workplace, and then to this guy, was I had a really bad relationship with my dad. And I needed somebody to tell me that I looked good, that I was worth dating, that I was attractive, that he wanted me. And, you know, I was obsessed with that guy filling that need in me. That's bad baggage. Who wants to receive somebody like that? But I was so broken. And I thought if this guy paid attention to me and met my needs, he would heal me. He would bring healing to me. And I came to a point where, thankfully, the Lord protected me, but I had to stop. And I had to think. And I said, you know, I know that where I'm going and what I'm thinking and what this guy can provide for me is not a place that I want to end up in. And I thank God with all my heart that just the baby steps that I took to become aware of that was really wrong. So I made a decision then to take a different path. And a different path was to say, God, help me. You know, I don't know what's ahead, and I don't know a lot of things, but I know that this one's not good.
I'm looking in your direction
yeah,
for
I know.
time because I know
Yeah,
that
I know.
there's Q&A and stuff.
Oh,
but-
yes, I'm so sorry.
So another thing about baggage, and again, when I said we all bring baggage
Yeah.
in, I don't know how many of you guys in particular have read some of the older works of John Eldridge when he started out with Wild at Heart. I read that about 15 years ago. But one of the things that John clarified for me that we all experience, every man, every woman in this room has experienced what I'm going to say. You have experienced a wound in your past. A lie you have told yourself, a vow that you have made, and a way to pose. And that's baggage that we all bring into.
Bad baggage.
My wound in high school, I was rejected from the college I tried to get into. I dated a really smart girl. I was a C student. And I told myself in high school, you are so stupid. I don't know what your wound is, what lie is, but I carried from 17 to 43, you are so stupid. And then what happens is, you know, you make a vow, I will never get around smart people. And then I started posing. And all of us bring that baggage in. So every single one of us here have deep, deep intimacy needs that were made by God. Your need, my need for love and respect and desire and validation and beauty and approval and affirmation, acceptance, all of those things, those are beautiful, good desires inside you and me. But as much as you can resist trying to have that deep, internal, beautiful need and desire that's in you, having somebody else meet that need instead of the God that made you, when you recognize, just like we sang tonight, I'm loved by God, I'm accepted by God, He approves of me, He affirms me, I belong to Him. It takes the burden of you having to find that from another man or from another woman, and you can be and become and uncover and discover and recover the person that you're supposed to be.
Now, I would say every single one of us, as you said, we all carry baggage in.
Yes.
And so I'm just thinking for those of us, you know, we may be thinking, well, I'm thinking about the baggage that I carried in. I know Mallory says she carried in baggage to our marriage, but I mean, I definitely carried some baggage in. And would it be true to say that perhaps the only deal breaker when it comes to baggage is an unwillingness to work
Yes.
That's
on
good,
the
Adam.
baggage?
I love
Like, is
the
there
way-
anything else that would? I don't feel like there is. There's not anything else that would make me say, well, this is in your past, or you know, you've been through this, or you know, you thought this in the past, so we can never be together. Or is it more like, you know what? There's nothing that in and of itself is a deal breaker, except for your unwillingness not to work on it,
Well,
or us not to work on it together.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll comment very briefly.
Yeah.
But if there's two virtues or values that we have placed around our relationship in our marriage. And I don't know, honestly, at what season we heard this, but we've just picked up these ideas. And if I could put 2 fingerprints on you tonight here at MP Nights, it would be this: to always be curious and to always be a student of yourself and your friend, your spouse, if you have a family. We have 2 virtues in our relationship, and that's the point that you're saying. And if you run into somebody that goes, no, I'm not talking about it, I'm not curious about it, I'm not interested in it, it's not my problem, it's yours, be very careful.
Yeah.
Be very careful in that.
So I'm conscious that probably most people here, we're in the stage of we're dating, or we want to be dating, or we used to be dating, we want to be dating again. So Debbie, you had just said something when we were at dinner. You talked a little bit about like how to date with intention.
Yes.
Do you mind saying a little bit more about that?
Well,
That's good.
what we say when we're talking about marriage is you're going to fight, or you're going to have conflict in marriage and in relationships. So I would say, and we say make it productive. So I thought about when you're dating, and you're dating different people, or you're dating someone more regularly, I would say be intentional about it. Think about it. If you're with someone and you think in there about being productive. In other words, what do I like about this relationship? What am I missing in this relationship? And don't do it from such a critical way, or don't enjoy the time, but be aware, do I really like the values or the direction of this person with me? And being, curious about them. I mean, John asked me a lot of questions about my family. I did with him too. We tried to really get to know one another, and we were not faking it. Like, one of the things too was that I wasn't going to try to be intentionally something that I thought would really please him, as opposed to just being honest. And that comfort level that we had with one another made it enjoyable to keep dating.
And this is probably an add-on to that. I don't know what your view is of the universe, whether it's an endless universe that's up and out there. But the same way that there is this massive universe above us, there is a massive universe inside you. One of the things that we've seen when couples get to the 7-year mark and they start thinking, oh, I know everything about him. I know everything about her. May I just offer this idea? You're just beginning to get to know them. And even though we're 42 years in, I just printed out just 2 days ago, you might have seen it on the printer, I came across like 75 of the best questions you can ask people. We'll find it, we'll send it to them. And I couldn't wait to print it out, because we went away last night for a 24-hour getaway, just the 2 of us, because we got a lot of craziness going on in our home right now. We buried 2 grandchildren in 2 years. We have our oldest son, who's 40, temporarily staying with us. We have craziness going on. But man, we still want to be together. We want to be intimate, whatever word you use. What did you say? Explosive? Or what was the word you used?
I don't know what I
don't
said.
know what it was.
I know
but
some of the things you said tonight.
It sounded good, whatever it was. Whatever that was, that's what I wanted. But I printed them out. I know so many things about this woman, but I saw 75 questions like, I can't wait to ask her these. And that's the kind of relationship. If you get with some guy that's acted like he's known you after a year, run. Yeah. I mean,
It's so good, John.
Oh, I don't know.
So we have more stuff. We have more stuff that we wanted to talk about, but I really want to get to your questions, because we may even cover some of the
Q&A,
stuff
lots of
Lots of
questions.
questions.
Uh-oh, here we go.
So
Okay.
Mallory, you want to throw?
Okay.
throw the first question?
Ooh, the sex word. How can having sex before marriage in a safe, committed relationship hurt your future marriage?
I love that
Great question.
Yeah, Mallory, why don't you answer
Yeah, I
that?
got it. My mic.
That's what we're paying you guys for. So
Okay, great.
I love that. I love the question. You want to start, Mimi?
Well, it's not like I want to say, well, that has to hurt the relationship, from a sense that I don't want to judge and say, well, you did this wrong, or whatever. All I'm saying is that God said it is best to do it within marriage. So I believe that, I know that when we got married, first of all, we had a great honeymoon. And secondly, I know that he's committed to me before he knew me for a long time. And we decided that we were going to grow up together. And we saved that for our marriage. So I believe that because you're having sex before marriage, that doesn't break everything for you to have happiness in your marriage. You just may have to work a little harder in certain areas, or maybe it won't be a problem at all. I'm just saying I would encourage you, if you believe that, then get married.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to add. I think it's a great question, and unfortunately, I am going to say several times tonight, I don't know, because there's a lot of things that I don't know. I know this for me. I believe in God. I believe the God of the universe created us, and he set out some ground rules that he said, I think this is the way that life works the best. And I hope that you can hear it in my heart that I'm not condemning you for that at all. But, you know, when I say everybody's got to have a foundation, like the one verse that we put in that box, some of you that are here tonight that are Christians, you'll understand the verse in Psalm 127:1 that says, unless the Lord builds a house, except the Lord builds the house, you're going to labor in vain. In other words, it's a mindset that says, God, I don't know how to build a 42-year marriage. We're 42 years in, and we say, God, we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do this, so help us build this marriage. And the guidebook that we've chosen for us now, and so far, has been the Bible. And so there's a lot more questions.
Okay, can I just add this other?
No, submit to me. No, I'm teasing. Just a joke.
Okay.
Just a joke. Don't text me on that.
Well, okay, let's go to the next question.
We could legitimately talk about that all night. And I think, just to add one small thing to it, I feel like, and this is absolutely part of baggage that I've brought into marriage and stuff, so I don't have a perfect answer for this. But I do love what I've often heard Andy Stanley say about this is, are you potentially creating a regret for somebody else?
So good.
Do they think the same way about your relationship? Are they going to be disappointed if it doesn't turn out the way that they had expected? Are you potentially creating a regret for them? And so it's more out of a respect for them and honoring them and not wanting to create a regret for them than it is anything even selfish. And maybe you're cheating yourself out of future intimacy or something like that. But I agree. Okay, let's go to this next question.
Okay.
So what do you do with the fear of having a marriage like your parents?
Oh, I love that. I love that question. We actually talked about this one because, boy, there are absolute things, like on this baggage, there were absolute things that I did not ever want to repeat in our marriage that I saw in my parents. Same thing, she saw it. And so one of the things that I would say is pay very close attention, do some thinking around this idea. Look at your parents' marriage and ask yourself the question, what did I like and what didn't I like? What will I take and what will I leave? Some of you may have come out of homes like, I'm leaving 90%. But in my case, I mean, my father was a generous man. So I thought, I want to be a generous man. I want to be a generous father. I saw my 6'5" father pray with my mother on his knees. You know, as a 14, 15-year-old, it's like, oh, I guess this is what Christian men do. They pray with their wives. I brought that into our marriage 42 years ago. But my father was also extremely critical and judgmental, and I hate it. If I get the hint of criticism and judgmentalism, I flee. And, you know, we've even had to work through this in our marriage. But when you look at your parents, ask yourself the question, what will I take and what will I leave from that?
And I agree with that, and I think it's really important not to let, well, I'll say it for myself. My father was really angry. My mom was distant. And so I almost felt like, okay, I feel like an orphan inside of a family with parents, you know, and it was very hurtful. And I wasted a lot of time being angry. And then I decided, especially, at John's encouragement, which was hard for me, I had to humble myself to say, okay, what good did you see out of your parents' thing? So it's like, take note of what you don't like, and then try to figure out how would you change it. So for me, what I did was I saw the way my mom honored my dad, even despite the way he treated her.
Incredible.
And you know what? That really helped me honor my husband. And it helps me to treat him with respect as I believe that I'm supposed to. And when I do treat him with respect, it doesn't mean that I let him, run me down like I felt like my dad did to my mom. But I believe that there is a godly way that I can honor him.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is my dad, because he was so angry, because he was so angry, our environment in our home was very unsafe. Mm-hmm. And so once we were able to recognize that, we'd said, we are going to create a safe environment in our home.
Yeah, all I was going to say is that her comment on honor, you all are just being introduced to us, but there's a beautiful, big idea in the Bible that just talks about honor one another. Mm-hmm. I think in all relationships.
Yes,
and so, I don't have her bring me grapes. She doesn't bring my slippers. She doesn't bring me a newspaper.
I tell you when you're wrong.
She tells me all the time when I'm wrong, and I can't stand it. But there's just this view. The idea of honor, when you meet somebody famous or they came in, your physical reaction to that is sort of like, there's this sense of awe. There's this sense of honor. And to keep that in a relationship from the beginning to end. And boy, I thank God for your mom and that. Okay, we got some more questions.
Good. This next question, how do you feel about the phrase falling out of love? How do you keep it from happening?
Great.
Oh, we could tell you all kinds of things.
Great. You want to start on this one?
Well, first of all, it's normal if you feel like you're falling out of love or whatever, because we are human.
Yeah, get ready.
That's a great response.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't be afraid of hurting one another's feelings, and don't be caught off guard and think, oh no, everything's over. You have to work at it. Marriage, every single relationship takes work. And that's why I thank God for his presence in our life, because if it was left up to just me, how I feel and, oh, I don't like what you did. I don't think I like you anymore. And then you go away. You can't do that. But you fight for oneness. And you stay in there. And one of the things, we do all kinds of things. Like I said, I don't want to be a roommate. I don't want to be just a business partner. So we talk about it. There's times when I'm doing things that are unlovely or not fun for John and vice versa. So sometimes what we do, we make space for one another and we listen to one another. And then we had a hard week. And yesterday, it was really beautiful. He says, we're getting away. Because he knew that we just needed time alone to be together, to just, to work it out.
Yeah, and we say this in relationship. Just because you're fighting in a relationship or you fight in your marriage, that does not mean that you have a bad marriage. Mm-mm. A really healthy relationship is not void of conflict. But it's what do you do with the conflict? As Debbie said, you're going to fight. Make it productive. Yeah. And there are choices that are being made before, like what she said, you definitely go like this.
Yeah, you do.
Life has its ebbs and flows. There are days that I am so crazy about her. I'm calling her, I'm texting her saying, hey, you want to meet at the tub at 9? I'm giving every single hint I can. To try to score in the evening. It's like, man, this stuff about starting in the morning at the coffee pot, man, that's for women. Guys hate that stuff. It's like, can't we just be at the tub at 9 and call it a night? Doesn't work that way. Then there are other days it's like, I need to get home. I don't want to get home. Because she said something, she did something that bothered me. It separated us. We've had the times we've been in different rooms in the house because we've hurt one another's feelings. So, but you're committed.
Yes.
We are so committed to this idea of being one and becoming one, and because we know that we can't do it. The greatest place you can be in a relationship is when you say, God, I can't do this. But you can do this through us. So I just think you just keep working at it. Are we being too long?
No, you're
No.
great.
Okay.
You kind of answered some of this next
Okay,
question
love this
in
one,
that,
yeah.
but let's just really quickly.
yeah.
I hate arguing and confrontation. That's good. That's a good sign. Does this mean marriage will be difficult for me?
I love that.
I know.
Can I start with that one?
Yes, go ahead.
So you heard me say a few minutes ago to always be curious. Curiosity is not normal for most human beings. It's a value and a virtue that you have to develop. But we can all be students. And one of the ways that we describe ourselves as assessment junkies, Myers-Briggs, color, 5 love languages, 7 life languages, any assessment. And one of the assessments that I took when it was doing the Myers-Briggs, it was asking this question. It says, are you a person that prefers to comfort or confront? And I remember seeing that question. It's like, yes, I love to confront.
I was going to say it's not comfort.
I'll confront you about that later. But no, I think the thing is that you become a student of yourself. You become a student of your spouse, of your significant other. And if they're aware that you don't like confrontation, there's a reason for that. But absolutely not. It doesn't mean that marriage is going to be difficult. It's understanding your style of relating. I had to take a right path for somebody to give me a label like, John, you're so assertive and so blunt and so direct. I noticed her at one time. She was just like backing away from me. It's like, what are you doing? What's the matter? She goes, you're scaring me. I said, scaring you? I said, I'm upset about the subject. I'm not upset with you. So we've had to work through those kinds of things to know your style of relating.
And I love that whoever asked this question, that you're aware of that. And that would be something that I would talk to, talk to the person you're dating. And, you work through it. That's why no 2 marriages are going to be alike. There's so many different combinations. So that's what makes marriage beautiful. And the other thing, just relationships being together, you can become stronger as you receive one another.
I got to say one other thing. I know we're out. I know we're almost out. But so some of you may have heard an older book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, yeah.
One of the habits was seek to understand before being understood. And I hate to say this, I hate to admit it, but I was the kind of dad, I was the kind of spouse, unfortunately, for too many years, lived with, I need you to understand me. And when I read that book, there was a huge defining moment. Again, there was a paradigm shift that I want to spend twice as much time seeking to understand. And it changed, I think it was a huge change because I used to say, hey, I need you to understand me on this. And instead of that, you're doubling your time and your effort to say, hey, help me understand. Why is arguing or confrontation, why is that difficult for you? And when you can have that understanding kind of conversation, it leads, I think, to better relationships.
Oh, yeah.
So.
I have one more question. So if someone here is single and they're like, I want to have a marriage where I can actually have an argument. Like, that would be so nice, Or I want to be in a dating relationship where I can be fighting with someone. Like, that sounds like a great break from being single. What would you say to that person? What is like maybe 1 or 2 things that they can do right now to get as prepared as possible as a single person or who's dating maybe for their future family?
And ask the front part of that question again.
What's one thing you would recommend someone doing here tonight who's single or who's dating, who wants to get ready to be as healthy as possible for their future family? What would you say is like 1 or 2 things that they could do right now?
Well, I know you're looking at me.
That's because I don't have an answer.
Well, this is what comes to mind. All of us have longings. All of us have longings that sometimes get met and sometimes don't. So if you're longing to be married, it's a good longing, but I would recommend don't obsess about it. I think present your longings before the Lord. There are people that get married that long to have children. They don't get to have children. There are people that get married and long to have a great marriage, but for some reason their marriage doesn't work out. And it isn't always, that it takes two to be married. It takes two to work at it. So what I would say is focus on your relationship with God. Focus on what you have in your life and be good at it. Keep growing and pray about it, Pray and say, make your desires known before the Lord. Pay attention to the people that are around you. And let me tell you, it's so much better to be single than be in a bad marriage.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's another night. Yeah.
that's an idea.
Then somebody just wanted to know really quick, can you remind us,
yeah.
where do we get those 75 questions you talked about?
Well, I just came, what's today, Wednesday? I just got them Monday, and I think you might have got them as well in an email in our staff development.
Oh, I
great.
did? Great. Got to check my email. I've been checking my email for sure.
Well, I was pretty confident that you had printed them out as well to take Mallory away
thought
this
so,
Friday
too.
to
That
ask her.
That's
sounded
right. I
like
actually
something
framed them in
we
our
would do.
home. Yeah. Just forgot I did that.
So I think if you have an email, there's a link or there's a PDF.
We'll put it up on Facebook
Yeah.
or Instagram
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that you get it. Don't
They're
worry about it.
So
fantastic
romantic of you
questions,
guys
yeah.
to want those questions.
Yeah.
Wow, it's great.
Well, hey, I hope that this series and especially then tonight, hearing from John and Debbie has been helpful. I hope that it gives some guidance about how to set yourself up for creating the best possible future family. John, would you mind closing us out in prayer?
No, I'd love to. Thank you. Father, you know Debbie's and my wonders and apprehensions coming here tonight, wondering whether the things that we'd been through and have experienced would be able to relate to these young people that are seeking knowledge and wisdom and understanding and direction. And I just hope that a couple of ideas would have stuck in their minds and their hearts, causing them to wrestle with themselves, with you, with their friends, in their relationships. God, I cannot help but just say thank you for sending Jesus to come into our lives and to help us, to show us the way. Thank you for giving us your word that we could read it and try to understand it and find some guidelines that can help us in this very crazy life in which we live. So thank you for this time together tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hey, would you guys give it up for John and Debbie for being here tonight?